You're listening to the All-Star Charts podcast with JC Peretz on TechnicalAnalysisRadio.com.
All right, everybody. Today, I am joined by Sean McLaughlin. He's the Chief Options Strategist here at All-Star Charts, and he attended Chart Summit and helped host it. Sean, thanks for being here.
Oh, man, it's great to be here.
We just got back a little over a week ago, so it's kind of, we've had enough time to sort of digest what actually took place in Breckenridge, Colorado. I can't believe we pulled it off.
Oh, man, it was a great event. My only great regret is that my broken arm prevented me from participating in all of the extracurricular winter sports, because it looked like you guys were having a lot of fun and the weather was certainly perfect for it.
I got to tell you, Sean, there were some killer skiers out there and snowboarders as well. Shout out Brett Conrad. I think Todd Gordon, definitely one of the better skiers. Brian, Alpha Trends, he's always awesome. And John Nigerian killed it. Hell of a skier. So I was just trying to keep up, really.
I think next year we should have the Chart Summit Cup, where it's awarded to the best downhill skier, like we have some kind of race or something.
You know, Todd Gordon actually raced in college. Him and I did kind of like a fake little race, like in a little kiddie slope, and he killed me. It was very funny because it was very clear who had done that before and who never had. You know, Todd's like putting his head down and bending, and he's like ready to go, and I'm just kind of cruising around.
Well, you know, we're all traders, right? I mean, maybe we could build some kind of fun game around it. Like we could all like build in some odds, and we can get some bets, and like a guy like Todd Gordon, like, you know, you got to add like 20 seconds to his score against somebody else or something like that, and we could get a futures market going on it.
Yeah, and Nigerian actually had the clothing for it. You know, when you wear like, it's kind of like body armor, because when you hit the gates, like you can get all bruised up. He was wearing all of that, like he was ready to go racing.
So he basically took his football gear from 30 years ago and put some skis to it.
Yeah, pretty much, actually. That's exactly how it was. So let me ask you this. So you personally didn't ski or go on snowmobiles. You enjoyed yourself with your wife and your son, which is great also. But you spoke to a lot of people. It seemed like they had a blast, not just, you know, on both sides, really, right? The mountains and in the presentations. Everybody seemed to really enjoy themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, most people took advantage of everything, right? They came for the conference, but they also came for the sports and for the outdoor activities. So most people took advantage of all of that. There were a handful of people like me who didn't participate in skiing for one reason or another. There were a couple of people that just aren't skiers. They didn't want to ski. So cool, that's fine. But they had fun. They did the snowmobiling that one day, and they took advantage of just enjoying the town. I mean, the town of Breckenridge is a beautiful town. I mean, everyone thinks about the skiing, and the skiing is world class, of course. But boy, if you like good classic mountain towns, I mean, Breckenridge has everything you want, right? I mean, it was an old mining town for 100 years ago, long before skiing ever came to town. So
it looks it.
Yeah, so you got lots of great restaurants, lots of great old taverns and pubs, and there's history there, and it's a wonderful way to spend an afternoon if you can't ski. I mean, that's what my wife and my kid did. We explored a bit. We hit a museum while we were there, and man, it's just a wonderful place, and we couldn't have picked a better location for the first in-person Chart Summit.
Yeah, I really like that town a lot, and it just made sense. There's just so much to do, so many options. So even if you're not a skier, even though a lot of people were, even if you're not a skier or snowboarder, plenty to do. So in terms of the evenings, right? Like I said in the blog post, I mean, I always thought that if I ever threw some sort of financial conference, right, I'd want to control the music. And I really like how some conferences are open bar the whole time instead of just during certain parts. Like, man, if you're there listening to presentations, go grab a glass of wine and relax. So that, that's something I always wanted to do. And, I think 90s hip hop at a financial conference just makes sense. So we only played that, and I thought it was great, selfishly,
Well, I too thought it was great, and I have to admit, JC, I had a little bit of apprehension about the open bar during the conference, and here's why. My thinking was one of two things could happen here. either one, everyone who is out on the slopes all day is going to be exhausted because they just like crushed it for 5 hours out there in the snow. And then they come into here and it's a nice, kind of warm, comfortable environment, and they have a couple drinks, and next thing you know, you got 40 guys snoozing out there in the crowd, right? So that was worry number one. Worry number two was it could go the completely other way. Crowd could get completely rowdy. We'd get absolutely nothing done. We'd have a hell of a time doing it, but nothing would get accomplished. Turns out neither of my fears were realized. It was a perfect environment. I really felt like everybody was very engaged, and a lot of the credit goes to the speakers, right? I mean, we had some fantastic presentations, a lot of great knowledge dropped, and everybody was very engaging and entertaining, and the crowd was great with questions. I mean, shit, we had a guy sitting in the front row, Johnny Novak.
Shout out Johnny Novak.
Out of nowhere, Johnny Novak sitting in the front row. He took about 16 notebooks full of notes, and he had questions.
I've never seen anything like it. Out of control. Kudos to him.
For every presentation, every panel, and super engaged. And, I love the guy. I mean, I knew him before this conference. I think he was new to everybody else, but I knew him because he lives locally in Colorado. He comes to my trader meetups. Just a great guy, and a perfect embodiment of the type of participants that we had in the crowd.
What was your favorite presentation?
Oh, well, I had a lot of favorites for a lot of different reasons. I think is just like pure entertainment as far as like delivery and just, I don't know, entertainment value, I guess, for lack of a better term, it would probably be Tyler Wood from the CMT organization. I just thought his presentation was fantastic. I think you missed it. You were busy recording something out in the other room.
Yeah, I was on the side doing the side interviews with Rochelle.
He was just, he just gave a really entertaining presentation filled with a lot of history, a lot of arcane history that nobody, kind of drawing connections between technical analysis and things from the old days. I mean, we're talking old days. I'm talking like ancient Rome old days. Just fascinating and unusual topics. And then, of course, Todd Gordon was awesome. I just loved his topic. Todd came in there and drew the connections between skiing and trading and skiing from the competitive skier's point of view, which is what he was in college. And I just thought that was a fantastic topic. And little sidebar, I had a late night chat with Todd Gordon later that night after a few beers, and he admitted to being very nervous up there on stage. Well, maybe not nervous. Maybe that's not the right word. He was having trouble catching his breath. He was saying, the elevation, whatnot. And he's like, I've given 200 presentations in front of audiences, but this was the first one I've ever felt. He's like, I felt like I was nervous because I couldn't catch my breath. I didn't notice it. I don't think you noticed it. I don't think anybody noticed it, but he admitted to being very nervous.
Matthew Verdal said the exact same thing. I felt it a little bit myself. I mean, listen, we're almost at 10,000 feet, so it's just harder. Bruni comes up there and he's like, all the speakers keep complaining how it's tough giving a presentation at 10,000 feet, but I find it hard to give a presentation at any elevation.
By the way, how great was Bruni? Not only did we completely ice the kicker to get him started. Do you remember that?
Yeah, because we were a little bit behind, maybe 15, 20 minutes. So we were like, all right, and people were getting up to go to the bathroom or whatever it is. And we were like, you know what, let's do like a 10-minute break. Everybody run to the bathroom, get a beverage, because Bruni's coming up. Like you said, totally icing the kicker.
Well, what's funny is because the presentation that was on before Bruni was going a little bit long. No, no worries. It was a great conversation. People were asking a lot of questions, so it went long for that reason. And Bruni's he's all mic'd up. He's hanging out in the back. He's ready to do his thing, and he ended up standing there like ready to go for 30 minutes easily. And then we do I went up on stage and I introduced him as the next speaker, and then you're like, wait, hold on, let's do a little 10-minute break. So we totally iced him. I mean, man, he was sitting there fretting about that presentation for a long time. But he, of course, knocked it out of the park once he got up there. But
he has the best dad jokes, right? I mean, come on.
Well, I was sitting, I forget who I was sitting next to while Bruni was talking, but he and I were just kind of observing Bruni, and the guy said to me, he's like, wow, so he's pretty young, right? And I was like, yeah, he's like 23. And he was like beside himself. He's like, what? Wow. I mean, I know he's young, but I had no idea he's that young. He was very impressed.
His presentation was really good on market breadth. I thought that was excellent.
Yeah, absolutely. And so kudos to Bruni. We gave him a little hard time at the end of his presentation during the Q&A session. We put him on the line about his girlfriend, but it's all good.
All good. I thought that was hilarious. I really enjoyed, Sean. I really enjoyed the one-on-one you did with John Nigerian. I thought that was excellent. He's got some awesome stories, and I know the audience really enjoyed that. I've heard some of those stories in the past, from him and I known each other for a long time. But for people hearing some of the stuff he was saying for the first time, they really, really enjoyed that. And you did a nice job picking his brain, as we figured, which is why we chose you to do that.
Well, thanks for saying that, but for me, it was a crazy honor to do that because I've known John a little bit since my days back in Chicago. He and I travel in some of the same circles. We've had the occasion to have a beer together for a time or two, but he's a guy that very early in my options trading career, he was a guy that was instrumental in stoking my interest in options trading. I read his first book, and I was just kind of blown away by the way he describes and explains arcane topics in a very plain English, easy to understand way, which has been a huge influence on me as I've progressed throughout my career. And being able to just interview John and ask the questions that I asked, it was naturally easy for me to do that because those are questions I've always wanted to ask John. So it was super awesome to be able to do that. And I'll tell you, he dropped something on us that it was the first time I had heard it, and it was really an eye-opener for me as an options trader. The piece of knowledge that he dropped, and I know there was a question you wanted to ask me later, but we'll address it right now because you asked me, you wanted to discuss what's something I learned at this conference, and one of the things that I learned was during this talk with John. He mentioned that a lot of people like to analyze options volume, they're looking for that in the know buyer, that inside information guy that's taking a large position ahead of some breaking news that may or may not be an illegal trade, right? But the one thing he said is that everyone who's analyzing options data, a lot of amateurs get all excited when they see a big print or an unusual amount of prints. And he said, I don't care if it's a big print or an unusual amount of prints. He's like, all I really care about is if the trades are taking place on the offer and not on the bid. And I thought, and at first I was like, what does he mean by that? Why does that matter? And then he kind of explained it, and and a light bulb went off in my head. He basically said, there are so many people out there that are selling premium in the markets as a strategy, right? Like that's just their go-to thing. They're selling calls or they're selling iron condors or whatever. They're just premium sellers. So naturally, lots of volume takes place on the bid because they're just hitting the best bid out there to get short. He's like, when someone makes a trade on the offer, that is somebody who's acting with conviction. Somebody wants to participate and they don't care what the price is. They will pay the offer. They want to get in. They don't want this trade to get away from them, whatever that trade is. And that was a really insightful and really that was a new piece of information to me. I never really considered that, and I've been thinking about that ever since. And that's something I want to start, investigating more. It's a pretty profound idea, especially for people who like to trade single stocks and look at options data to get clues on direction.
What I was interested in is just the sheer volume changes. He's talking about compared to 20, 30 years ago and how that changed into the, into the 90s and 08, 07, and then what we're seeing now and then where we're going in the future. It's just going to be more trading, more volume, more people getting involved. From a volume standpoint, it doesn't really affect the volume. But what's interesting is that anybody could trade options, right? You don't need that much money. Or and to the other extreme, if you have all the money in the world, then you definitely need to be in the options market, right? So and everybody in between. So it's really fascinating. It's a fascinating piece of the entire marketplace, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad that he joined the conference. I'm biased because I was the one who got to interview him, but I thought he was probably, for my money, the best segment. And that's no disrespect to everyone else who spoke. Again, as we mentioned before, lots of great speakers, but boy, I really enjoyed that time with John. He was great.
You know what else I enjoyed? Matthew Verdow, he's the founder of Optima, which is the charting software I use. the tools that they're building from a quantitative standpoint to be able to create models and back test it and optimize it and add new layers and things like that and really dive deep into it, man, they were doing some awesome things. And I thought he did a really nice job of explaining that. And one thing that stood out for sure is he said early in his presentation, Matthew did, he said fundamentals drive markets, technicals help take advantage of it. And the way I see it, I mean, who cares about what's driving the markets, right? It doesn't matter. We're here to take advantage of it. And that's why we analyze the behavior of the market. That's why we're analyzing the technicals. And I thought that was very well said.
Yeah, that line about fundamentals driving markets and technicals are what people use to take advantage of it. That's an awesome concept to think about. I love that. I'm glad that he brought that up. Hey, what did you think about the social media panel? We had Howard Lindzen up there, the Godfather, right? And we had Brian Shannon and a couple other guys. Social media is important to you. It's deep in what you and what we do. Any takeaways from that for you?
Sean, if it wasn't for social media and this community that we've been a part of for the last decade, we wouldn't be where we are. We wouldn't be doing what we're doing. We wouldn't be having this conversation. There would be no podcast. There would be no chart summit, right? There would be no blogs, right? You've had your blog for longer than me. So yeah. None of these things would exist. So, I feel like it would be disingenuous for all of us to get together, which we pretty much all met on social media, right? Almost 100% of us met each other through some sort of social, to not have that conversation really in front of everybody. And I thought that, Howard, obviously founder of StockTwits, you have been around forever, of course. And, we had a couple of other representatives as well. Ian McMillan, he's at the Chart Life. Brian, who is the community manager. Brian Shannon, obviously, I look at him as being such a pioneer. Sean, this dude was making YouTube videos about the market, looking at technical analysis, 5-10 minute videos every single day. This goes back to 2005, 2006. I mean, talk about a pioneer. Huge inspiration to me for sure. I used to watch his videos for years. And then once I completed the CMT in 2008, back in the day, you had to read all these books, a zillion books. The first book I voluntarily read once I was done with the CMT was Brian's book. I called him like, hey, I'm leaving Italy. I need a book to read for the plane. Can you overnight it to me? And he did. and now looking back on it, a decade later, a decade plus, we're hosting Chart Summit together. So, I think that's such a beautiful piece of the puzzle that we've all grown together, right? And learned from one another. I mean, to this day, I incorporate multiple time frames in everything I do. Where the hell you think I learned how to use multiple time frames? This is Brian Shannon. So it's great to, people that inspire you to be able to get together and have some beverages and throw yourself off some cliffs.
Hey, speaking of inspiring, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the ladies we had present.
That, I would say that one and Todd Gordon's presentation were probably my favorite. I think Todd Gordon, most creative presentation, I think goes to him. And the women in technical analysis or women in finance, I believe, man, both of them were fantastic. I didn't know Kathy before that, so she was new to me. Brian knew her from Denver, I believe. She just came out with her book, Kathy Donnelly. Kimmy, I've known forever. Kimmy, I've known for over 10 years. She's great. I knew she was always great. She's always super friendly and energetic and just great to be around, just a very positive attitude. But I thought she has some killer stories. She's been around and she's like, my whole life I've been working with, with guys. I mean, that's just the way it is. And hearing her kind of give her perspective and everything. There's a lot of women out there, Sean, that, are maybe having a tough time or struggling or not sure if they can enter that world. I think both Kimmy and Kathy, great inspirations for sure, whether you're male or female. Kimmy swings, man. She's trading. She's no joke.
Yeah, Kimmy's funny because obviously she's a very engaging personality. If you just meet her at the bar and shake her hand, she'll talk your ear off for an hour if you let her, which is great. She can carry a conversation. But the one thing that's surprising about Kim, if you didn't know it about her, if you didn't know she was a trader, you would never guess it looking at her. And then all of a sudden she starts dropping old chiseled veteran. I said that wrong. Grizzled veteran Wall Street stories, and you're like, wait, what? You've been around for that long, and you've done this, and you've worked with these people, and you've been through that. Like, holy cow! It really sets you back. It's amazing. So she was great, and of course Rochelle.
She killed it. I thought she moderated that panel between the two of them, fantastic. And then she conducted a ton of interviews outside, which I haven't gotten a chance to see all of them. I've seen some, I participated in some, I overheard others. So I'm still catching up. And by the way, if you're listening, you can go to chartsummit.com and you can see all of the videos of Chart Summit 2019 are there. Any of them missing will be there over the next couple of days. So definitely keep checking back, chartsummit.com. They're definitely all there. And then, yeah, Sean, I think Rochelle absolutely killed it. She did a nice job on the side interviews, and she did a really nice job on the panel as well. And I just want to thank StockTwits. This conference was presented by StockTwits. Brian Shannon and myself were the co-hosts of the event. I learned a lot. I had a blast. I just like to thank our other sponsors as well. Optima, the official charting software of Chart Summit 2019, as well as Speed Trader, CMT Association, Trade Ideas, TrendSpider, Investopedia, TradingAnalysis.com, and MarketSmith by Investors Business Daily. Sean, we wouldn't have been able to put on this weekend if it wasn't for all of these people. So, I mean, I couldn't be more thrilled about it.
Yeah, I love the way it came together. The sponsors really rallied behind the event, which made it so that we could do all the fun things that we did. So it was wonderful, and we thank you from the bottom of our hearts, and hope we can count on you again next year. I think everyone agrees that it was a great event to be a part of. So thank you, everyone.
So where's next year, Sean?
Well, I mean, look, I'm biased. I could drive to Breckenridge from my house, so I would be all for doing it there again. But I heard some rumors dropped about maybe Lake Tahoe next year. Maybe.
You know where my head, obviously you get a bunch of people together, everyone's having a good time, everyone's already talking about next year, right? You can't even just enjoy the present. So like on the first night, we haven't even started the damn thing, and everyone's like, "Where's next year?" So I think a good argument for sure is Park City, just because it's so easy to get to. Once you get to Park City, you're there, and you got a handful of mountains you can go to. So I think that's one option. There's a huge trading community in Vancouver. I was just in Whistler a few weeks back, and I loved it. Whistler is awesome. We can catch something like that maybe in late February, early March. That's an option. We could do Breck and make it an annual Breckenridge thing and kind of just, it's always there, or we can just make it exciting and pick a different place every time, right? That's the other argument. And I like Jackson Hole, Wyoming would be, selfishly, I've never been there. So I kind of, I got to make my way out there at some point. Telluride, Colorado, another option, but it's a pain to get to. Direct flight from Newark, New Jersey, though. So, So that's where I had.
Random.
I know, right? Well, that was as of maybe 10 years ago. They've had that for a while. So you guys listening out there, if you have any suggestions or you want to weigh in on where we can do Chart Summit 2020, if you like some of the ideas I mentioned, or if you have some of your own ideas, info@allstarcharts.com, send your request there. And we're going to send a survey to all of the attendees so we can find out what they liked, what they didn't like, what we can do better, all of those things. So feel free to reach out, info@allstarcharts.com. And, Sean, I really appreciate the help that you did. A lot of panel discussions, and, you were always helpful in everything. Any final words, any last thoughts of this last Chart Summit?
Well, look, as a function of my career, I've attended a lot of finance conferences, and a lot of them tend to kind of bleed together. They're all kind of the same when you get down to it. I felt like this conference was so different on so many levels, which made it awesome. I've never gone to a conference where there was a lot of emphasis paid on having fun and getting outside and getting some exercise and enjoying the great outdoors. That alone was totally worth it. And the location was unbelievable. Like we said earlier, the weather was perfect. It was the right size, I felt, JC. Wasn't too big. We didn't want it to be big. We kind of said it at the outset when we started playing this. We were like, well, if we can get 50 people to attend, that would be wonderful. And I think we ended up getting 80, something like that. And that was a great number. The room was never felt too crowded, but definitely was full. And there was always energy and everybody was happy to be there. It was just, to me, I mean, of course I'm biased, right? I mean, because we all put this together, but boy, I felt like it was probably the best financial conference I've ever been to. So there it is.
Well, I appreciate that. And I totally agree. I mean, I've never been able to ski during the day and rip through charts at night. Like, that's just not a thing. But I guess it is now. And you know what else caught me off guard, Sean? Listen, it was night number one. Everyone's out late drinking. Then we get up in the morning, ski all day, presentations all afternoon and all night, more booze. Everyone's talking. Everyone's having a good time. Then we get up in the morning again, ski all day again. I was doing 15, 20,000 feet each day, vertical feet. So, we were really at that, I saw Nigerian's numbers. He was even more on one of the days. So, we were really hitting it hard. And at the end of the last night, like, this was Brian Shannon's presentation, he's killing it as always, right? No shocker there. I mean, the house was packed until the last possible moment. That kind of caught me a little bit off guard, because most conferences you go to, by the last day, everyone's gone, everyone's exhausted, there's nobody left. This was the exact opposite. It was like standing room only.
Yeah, nobody left early at any time throughout the conference. I thought it was always well attended, and everyone was really engaged.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is JC and Sean signing off. We have discussed Chart Summit enough until now. We are ready to move on with our lives and keep trading and get ready for Chart Summit 2020.
Right on, JC. Great job, buddy.